आज हम नया स्टैंडर्ड स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं। अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड का नाम है कॉन्टिंजेंसीज एंड इवेंट्स ऑकरिंग आफ्टर द बैलेंस शीट डेट। AS4 है ये। पेज नंबर बताती हूँ आपको। चैप्टर 7 हमने स्टार्ट किया है। ओके, एक बार लिंक शेयर कर देती हूँ। ओपन चैप्टर 7। एक मिनट है। यस, रीनेम करना पड़ेगा। इट इज AS4। ओके, चलो। सो नाम क्या है? AS4 contingencies and events occurring after the balance sheet date. So बहुत छोटा स्टैंडर्ड है ये and it is related to items impacting financial statements. चलो क्या क्या सीखना है देखते हैं। इंट्रोडक्शन। All paragraphs of AS4 that deal with contingencies are applicable only to the extent not covered by other accounting standards. Prescribed by the central government. So for example, the impairment of financial assets such as impairment of receivables, मतलब इसको commonly known as provision for bad and doubtful debts, is governed by this standard. जिसको कौन सा भी स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल नहीं है ना, उसको AS4 एप्लीकेबल है। So thus the present standard AS4 deals with the treatment and disclosure requirements in the financial statements of events occurring after balance sheet date. So balance sheet date के बाद जो events होने वाले हैं उसके अकाउंटिंग ट्रीटमेंट के बारे में AS4 में दिया हुआ है। कॉन्टिंजेंसीज मतलब क्या देखो, कॉन्टिंजेंसी इज अ कंडीशन और सिचुएशन द अल्टीमेट आउटकम ऑफ विच आइदर गेन और लॉस विल बी नोन और डिटरमाइंड ओनली ऑन द ऑकरेंस और नॉन ऑकरेंस ऑफ फ्यूचर ऑफ वन और मोर अनसर्टन फ्यूचर इवेंट्स। सो ऐसी कंडीशन जिसका आउटकम अभी करंटली पता नहीं है। ओके, आउटकम क्या होगा, गेन और लॉस। वो गेन होने वाला है या लॉस होने वाला है वो पता नहीं है अभी। वो कब पता चलेगा? फ्यूचर में ही। इट डिपेंड्स ऑन द फ्यूचर इवेंट्स पे डिपेंड है, तो इसको बोलेंगे कॉन्टिंजेंसीज। Accounting treatment of contingent losses. The accounting treatment of contingent loss is determined by the expected outcome of the contingency. So the accounting treatment of contingent losses is determined by the expected outcome of the contingency. So किस पे डिपेंड है देखो, if it is likely that a contingency will result in a loss to the enterprise, then it is prudent to provide for that loss in the financial statements. Okay, accounting treatment of contingent losses. अगर आपको लग रहा है कि contingency will result in a loss to the enterprise, then it is prudent to provide for loss in the financial statements. ABC has filed a case against a debtor for recovery of 25 lakhs. So ABC ने केस फाइल की है against the debtor for recovery of 25 lakh. Accordingly, according to the legal team, the chances of recovery is nil. Therefore, ABC should make provision for doubtful debt. So अभी लीगल टीम हमारी अगर बता रही है कि जो कॉन्टिंजेंसी का रिजल्ट आउटकम लॉस आने वाला है, रिकवरी इज नील, तो हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा? ABC should make a provision for doubtful debts. The estimation of the amount of contingent loss to be provided for in the financial statements may be based on judgments made by the मैनेजमेंट. सो कितनी अमाउंट प्रोवाइड करनी है, तो आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा? एस्टिमेट करनी पड़ेगी वो अमाउंट. एंड वो एस्टिमेशन कैसे आप करोगे? इट डिपेंड्स ऑन द जजमेंट ऑफ द मैनेजमेंट. इफ देयर इज कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग और इनसफिशिएंट एविडेंस फॉर एस्टिमेटिंग द अमाउंट ऑफ कॉन्टिंजेंट लॉस, देन disclosure is made of the existence and nature of the contingency. Then disclosure is made of the existence and nature of contingency. The estimate of outcome and of the financial effect of contingencies are determined by the judgment of the management of the enterprise. This judgment is based on the consideration of information available up to the date on which the financial statements are approved, and will include a review of the events occurring after the balance sheet date, supplemented by experience of similar transactions, and in some cases reports from independent experts. उन्होंने सिर्फ दिया है कि estimates of outcome के लिए क्या क्या करना पड़ता है. The existence and amount of guarantees, obligations arising from discounted bill of exchange and similar obligations undertaken by an enterprise are generally disclosed in the financial statements by way of a note, even though the possibility that loss due to enterprise will occur is remote. Okay, so loss discounting of bill of exchange पता है आपको, हम बिल हमें कस्टमर से मिलता है, हम उसका बैंक के साथ डिस्काउंटिंग करते हैं, एंड फिर बैंक हमारे कस्टमर के पास जाती है ऑन ड्यू डेट. सो वहां पर कॉन्टिंजेंसी क्या है कि अगर हमारे कस्टमर ने पेमेंट नहीं किया बैंक को, तो हमें पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा. ओके, सो ये जो कॉन्टिंजेंसी है, इट इज रिमोट, मतलब ये दूर है, फिर भी ये कॉन्टिंजेंसी आपको दिखानी है. इवन दो द पॉसिबिलिटी दैट अ लॉस टू द एंटरप्राइज विल ऑकर इज रिमोट, फिर भी आपको क्या करना है? इट इज जनरली डिस्क्लोज्ड इन द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स बाय वे ऑफ अ नोट. अकाउंटिंग ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ कॉन्टिंजेंट गेन्स पढ़ो. कॉन्टिंजेंट गेन्स आर नॉट रिकॉग्नाइज्ड, हाईलाइट करो, आर नॉट रिकॉग्नाइज्ड इन द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स सिंस देयर recognition may result in the recognition of revenue which may never be realized. So a contingent gains recognize नहीं करना है. However, when the realization of gain is virtually certain, then such gain is not a contingency and accounting for the gain is appropriate. उसी केस में when it is virtually certain confirm है तो ही आपको gain दिखाना है. Then it is not a contingency ना. So the amount at which a contingency is stated in the financial statements is based on the information which is available at the date on which the financial statements are approved. Now events occurring after the balance sheet date को इसका मीनिंग देखो क्या है. पहले तो कब तक के इवेंट्स लेने हैं. क्योंकि इवेंट्स तो होते ही लेने वाले हैं ना आफ्टर बैलेंस शीट डेट ऑल्सो. सो कब तक के इवेंट्स को आप बोलोगे इवेंट्स आफ्टर बैलेंस शीट डेट. तो देखो इवेंट्स ऑकरिंग आफ्टर बैलेंस शीट डेट आर दोज सिग्निफिकेंट इवेंट्स both favorable and unfavorable that occur between the balance sheet date and the date on which the financial statements are approved by board of directors in case of a company and by other corresponding approving authority in the case of any other entity. By the corresponding approving authority in the case of other entity. Okay, so कहाँ से कहाँ तक के बैलेंस शीट डेट से date on which financial statements are approved by board of directors in case of a company and by corresponding approving authority in case of any other entity. वहां तक के क्या लेने आपको इवेंट. सो एग्जाम्पल देखो फॉर द ईयर एंडिंग ऑन 31st March 2001 financial statement is finalized and approved by the board of directors of the company in its meeting held on 4th September 2001. In this case, events taking place between 1st April to 4th September are termed as events occurring after the balance sheet date. Okay, 31st March मतलब 1st April से लेके 4th September तक के. 4th September को क्या हुआ, फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट फाइनलाइज एंड अप्रूव हुआ. ठीक है. टू टाइप्स ऑफ इवेंट्स कैन बी डिफाइंड, कैन बी आइडेंटिफाइड. सो टू टाइप्स ऑफ इवेंट्स देखो, एक है एडजस्टिंग इवेंट, दूसरा है नॉन एडजस्टिंग इवेंट. एडजस्टिंग इवेंट मतलब क्या, उस अगर वो इवेंट हुआ तो हमें जो बैलेंस शीट में एसेट्स लायबिलिटीज दिखाए हैं उसमें चेंजेस करने हैं अमाउंट्स में. एंड नॉन एडजस्टिंग इवेंट्स मतलब जो एडजस्ट नहीं हो सकते हैं वो, तो उसका सिर्फ क्या करना है आपको, डिस्क्लोजर दिखाना है नोट्स टू अकाउंट्स में. ओके, एसेट्स लायबिलिटीज के अमाउंट चेंज नहीं करने. तो वो कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करना है कि ये एडजस्टिंग इवेंट हुआ या नॉन एडजस्टिंग. सो देखो, दोज विच प्रोवाइड्स फर्दर एविडेंस of the condition that existed at the balance sheet date. वो कंडीशन पहले से ही बैलेंस शीट डेट को थी, उसका फर्दर एविडेंस आपको बाद में मिला है आफ्टर बैलेंस शीट डेट. तो ऐसे वाले इवेंट्स जो होंगे वो क्या बोलेंगे हम उसको, एडजस्टिंग इवेंट्स. एग्जाम्पल देखो, अ ट्रेड रिसीवेबल वो पहले से ही था बैलेंस शीट में, वो डिक्लेयर कर दिया इंसॉल्वेंट आफ्टर रिपोर्टिंग डेट and unable to pay the full amount against whom provision for doubtful debt was created. Okay, so उसके अगेंस्ट ऑलरेडी प्रोविजन फॉर डाउटफुल डेट आपको क्रिएट करके रखना है क्योंकि वो इंसॉल्वेंट डिक्लेयर हो गया ना. सो वो कंडीशन पहले से ही थी. करेक्ट. ट्रेड रिसीवेबल्स पहले से ही बैलेंस शीट में थे. एडिशनल फर्दर इंफॉर्मेशन, क्या फर्दर एविडेंस क्या मिला कि वो इंसॉल्वेंट डिक्लेयर कर दिया है. करेक्ट. सो उसके अगेंस्ट हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा, प्रोविजन फॉर डाउटफुल डेट्स क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा. अभी नॉन एडजस्टिंग देखो, दोज विच आर इंडिकेटिव ऑफ कंडीशंस दैट अरोज सब्सिक्वेंट टू द बैलेंस शीट डेट. बैलेंस शीट डेट के बाद वो इंडिकेटिव है. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल, प्लांट गॉट डैमेज्ड ड्यू टू ऑकरेंस ऑफ फायर. ओके, बैलेंस शीट डेट के बाद आग लग गई तो हमें 31st मार्च को पता है कि आग लगने वाली है, बाद में नहीं. तो हम बिकॉज ऑफ फायर जो भी लॉस हुआ है तो उसको एडजस्ट कर सकते हैं क्या? नहीं कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि कुछ कंडीशन है ही नहीं ना, बैलेंस शीट में कुछ अमाउंट्स ही नहीं है एडजस्टमेंट्स करने के लिए। तो इस केस में सिर्फ क्या करना पड़ेगा? डिस्क्लोजर देना है नोट्स टू अकाउंट्स में। सो एडजस्टिंग इवेंट्स, adjustment to assets and liabilities are required for events occurring after the balance sheet date that provides additional information materially affecting the determination of amounts relating to conditions existing at the balance sheet date. For example, देखो, adjustment may be made for a loss on trade receivable account which is confirmed by the insolvency of a customer which occurs after the balance sheet date. नॉन एडजस्टिंग इवेंट्स देखो, एडजस्टमेंट्स टू एसेट्स एंड लायबिलिटीज आर नॉट अप्रोप्रिएट, यहां पर एडजस्टमेंट नहीं करना है। एडजस्टमेंट्स टू एसेट्स एंड लायबिलिटीज आर नॉट अप्रोप्रिएट फॉर इवेंट्स ऑकरिंग आफ्टर द बैलेंस शीट डेट इफ सच इवेंट्स do not relate to conditions existing at the balance sheet date. Example is decline in the market value of investments between balance sheet date and date on which the financial statements are approved. Ordinary fluctuations in market values do not normally relate to the conditions of investments at the balance sheet date but reflect circumstances which have occurred in the following period. Okay, so कुछ भी condition of investments at the balance sheet date. So जो ordinary fluctuations होते हैं ना, उसको हम treat नहीं करेंगे, उसको क्या करेंगे? Ordinary fluctuations in the market values do not normally relate to the investment condition of the investment at the balance sheet date but just reflect the circumstances which are occurred in the following period. So events occurring after the balance sheet date which do not affect the figures stated in the financial statements would not normally require disclosure in the financial statements, although they may be of such significance that they may require a disclosure in the report of approving authority to enable users of financial statements to make proper evaluations and decisions. So इसका disclosure देखो कहाँ पर करना है? They may require disclosure in the report of approving authority, मतलब board of directors के report में disclosure आएगा इसका, ठीक है? Dividend declared after balance sheet date देखो, there are events which although take place after balance sheet date are sometimes reflected in the financial statements because of statutory requirements or because of their special nature. So for example, if dividends are declared after the balance sheet date but before the financial statements are approved, the dividends are not recognized as liability at the balance sheet date because no obligation exists at that time unless a statute requires otherwise. So such dividends are disclosed in notes. ये डिविडेंड हम लायबिलिटी करके नहीं दिखाएंगे, ये सिर्फ आप नोट्स में डिस्क्लोज करने वाले हैं. Thus no liability for proposed dividend needs to be recognized in the financial statements for the financial year ended 31st March 17 and subsequent years. Such proposed dividends are to be disclosed in the notes to accounts as per Companies Amendment Rules 2016 issued on 30 March 2016. ओके, सो प्रपोज डिविडेंड करके लायबिलिटी नहीं दिखानी है, क्या करना है? सिर्फ नोट्स टू अकाउंट्स में दिखाना है. नाउ इवेंट्स इंडिकेटिंग गोइंग कंसर्न एजम्पशन इनएप्रोप्रिएट. So events occurring after the balance sheet date may indicate that enterprise ceases to be a going concern. मतलब ऐसे इवेंट्स हो गए कि जिसकी वजह से गोइंग कंसर्न का जो एजम्पशन है कंपनी का वो इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है, मतलब कंपनी कैन नो मोर सर्वाइव इन फ्यूचर, ऐसे लग रहा है. अ डिटोरेशन इन ऑपरेटिंग रिजल्ट्स and financial position or unusual changes affecting the existence or substratum of the enterprise after the balance sheet date. Example देखो, destruction of a major production plant by fire after the balance sheet date. अभी जो losses हो रहे हैं because of war, वो भी क्या है, उससे भी गोइंग कंसर्न एजम्पशन हैम्पर हो सकता है. करेक्ट. मे इंडिकेट अ नीड टू कंसिडर वेदर इट इज प्रॉपर टू यूज द फंडामेंटल अकाउंटिंग एजम्पशन ऑफ गोइंग कंसर्न in the preparation of financial statement. In case the going concern assumption is not valid based on the events occurring after balance sheet date, the financial statements are prepared on liquidation basis. So हम accrual basis पे financial statements prepare करते हैं, but अगर liquidation basis पे कब करना है, going concern assumption hamper हुआ है तो मतलब नेक्स्ट ईयर से कंपनी बिजनेस कंटिन्यू नहीं कर रही है, तो उस केस में लिक्विडेशन बेसिस पे आपको फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स प्रिपेयर करना है. लिक्विडेशन बेसिस मतलब क्या, ये एसेट्स हमने अभी सेल कर दिए तो कितनी अमाउंट रिसीव हो जाएगी, उस अमाउंट्स पे आपको सारे एसेट्स दिखाने हैं. एंड लायबिलिटीज आप क्या क्या कौन से अमाउंट में पेमेंट करोगे लायबिलिटीज का, वो अमाउंट्स पे आपको लायबिलिटीज दिखाने हैं. So events occurring after the balance sheet date, evidence of such condition be existed at the balance sheet date, तो वो adjusting event है, तो उस केस में adjustment करनी है to assets and liabilities and disclosure in the financial statement is required. And non-adjusting event, no evidence of such condition been existed at the balance sheet date and no adjusting non-adjusting event हो जाएगा फिर वो, and adjustment to assets and liabilities not required and disclosure कहाँ पर करना है, in the report of approving authority is required. Okay, so disclosure of events occurring after the balance sheet date requires following information: nature of event and estimate of financial effect. So standard हो गया, इतना ही standard था. So example देखो अभी, a company follows April to March as its financial year. The company recognizes checks dated 31st March or before received from customers after the balance sheet date but before approval of financial statements by debiting checks in hand account and crediting debtors account. So checks in hand are shown in the balance sheet as an item of cash and cash equivalent. All checks in hand are presented to the bank in the month of April and are also realized in the same month in the normal course after deposit in the bank. Even if checks bear the date 31st March or before, the checks received after 31st March do not represent any condition existing on 31st March. करेक्ट. देखो चेक्स के ऊपर डेट कौन से थे, 31st मार्च और उसके पहले के डेट्स थे. करेक्ट. बट आज अगर 31st मार्च है एंड कल चेक रिसीव हुआ है, चेक्स रिसीव्ड आफ्टर 31st मार्च, सो दे डू नॉट रिप्रेजेंट एनी कंडीशन ना एग्जिस्टिंग ऑन 31st मार्च. हमें पता था क्या कि आज रिसीव होने वाला है चेक, 2 अप्रैल को रिसीव होगा, नहीं पता था. सो 31st मार्च को कौन सी भी कंडीशन नहीं थी. करेक्ट. तो 31st मार्च के बुक्स में वो दिखाना नहीं चाहिए. Thus, the collection of checks after balance sheet date is not an adjusting event. Okay, adjusting event नहीं है. And recognition of checks in hand is therefore non-consistent, is therefore not consistent with the requirements of AS4. Moreover, the collection of checks after balance sheet date does not represent any material change or commitments affecting financial position of the enterprise, and so no disclosure of such collections in director's report is necessary. So disclosure भी कुछ नहीं करना है, नॉर्मल चेक्स रिसीव हुए, नॉर्मल ऑर्डिनरी एक्टिविटी है ये. It should also be noted that the framework for preparation and presentation of financial statements define asset as resource controlled by the enterprise as a result of past events from which economic benefits are expected to flow to the enterprise. Since the company acquires custody of checks after 31st March, it does not have any control over the checks on 31st March, and hence checks in hand do not qualify to be recognized as an asset on 31st March. So वो assets नहीं बन सकते क्योंकि asset के definition में नहीं आ रहा है ना वो. Asset is a resource controlled by the enterprise, करें. and यहाँ पर कुछ भी कंट्रोल नहीं है क्योंकि 31 मार्च को वो कस्टडी में ही नहीं थे एंटरप्राइज के. सो इस केस में क्या होगा, चेक्स आर नॉट एसेट्स, डू नॉट क्वालिफाई एज एसेट, सो कैन नॉट बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एज एन asset on 31st March. Now check illustration 1. Decide whether the theft of cash has to be adjusted in the accounts of the company for the year ended 31st March 2001. So in X Company Limited, theft of cash of 5 lakh by cashier in January 2001 was detected only in May 2001. The accounts of the company were not yet approved by the board of directors of the company. So theft कब हुआ था, जनवरी में हुआ था, करेक्ट. एंड वो पता कब चल गया, मई में. सो ये लिखना है पहले, प्रोविजन एज पर AS4, contingencies and events occurring after the balance sheet date. An event occurring after the balance sheet date may require adjustment to the reported amounts of assets and liabilities, expense or income if the fraud of accounting period is detected after the balance sheet date but before approval of financial statement. It is necessary to recognize that loss amounting to 5 lakh and adjust the accounts of the company for the year ended 31st March 2001. So वो condition थी ना, लॉस हो चुका है, 5 लाख गायब है, एंड वो कंफर्म कब हो गया, कब पता चला, मई में पता चला, करेक्ट. सो इट इज एन एडजस्टिंग इवेंट. सो आपको क्या करना है, एडजस्टमेंट्स दिखाने हैं बुक्स में. नाउ इलस्ट्रेशन 2, state with reason whether the loss due to earthquake is an adjusting or non-adjusting event and how the fact of loss is to be disclosed by the company. So an earthquake destroyed a major warehouse of SEO Limited on 28th May 2002. Okay, earthquake की वजह से क्या हो गया, वेयरहाउस डिस्ट्रॉय हुआ है SEO का. The accounting year of the company ended on 31st March, correct? The accounts were approved on 30th June 2002. The loss from earthquake is estimated at 30 lakhs. तो ये adjusting तो नहीं है, तो पहले उन्होंने क्या लिखा, contingency AS4, contingencies and events occurring after balance sheet date states that adjustment to assets and liabilities are not appropriate for events occurring after balance sheet date if such events do not relate to conditions existing at balance sheet date. The destruction of warehouse due to earthquake did not exist now on the balance sheet date, that is 31st March 2002. Therefore, loss occurred due to earthquake is not to be recognized in the financial statements in the financial year 2001-2. However, according to the standard, unusual changes affecting the existence or substratum of the enterprise after the balance sheet date may indicate a need to consider the use of fundamental accounting assumption of going concern in the preparation of financial statements. As per the information given in the question, the earthquake has caused major destruction. Facts लिखने हैं फिर से. Therefore, fundamental accounting assumption of going concern would have to be evaluated. Evaluate करना पड़ेगा कि going concern assumption correct है या नहीं है. Considering that the going concern assumption is still valid. Okay, हमने एक assumption दिया कि going concern assumption valid है. The fact of earthquake together with an estimated loss of 30 lakh should be disclosed in the report. किसके report में? In the report of the approving authority for financial year 2001-2 to enable users of financial statements to make proper evaluations and decisions. Yes. ये ऐसे ही लिखना होगा आपको. यस, वर्ड टू वर्ड लिखो देख के, सो प्रैक्टिस हो जाएगी. Illustration 3. Illustration 3. A company has filed a legal suit against the debtor from whom 15 lakh is recoverable as on 31st March 2001. The chances of recovery by way of legal suit are not good as per legal opinion given by the council in April 2001. Can the company provide for full amount of 15 lakh as provision for doubtful debts? तो इसका आंसर yes है ना. So ये as per AS4, contingencies and events occurring after the balance sheet date, assets and liabilities should be adjusted for events occurring after the balance sheet date that provide additional information or additional evidence to assist the estimation of amounts relating to conditions existing at the balance sheet date. In the given case, company should make the provision for doubtful debts. Reason likho, as legal suit has been filed on 31st March 2001 and the chances of recovery from the suit are nil, are not good. So though the actual result of legal suit will be known in future, yet situation of non-recovery from the debtors exists before finalization of financial statements. Therefore, provision for doubtful debt should be made for the year ended 31st March 2001. Okay, so this is additional evidence to assist the estimation of amounts relating to conditions existing at the balance sheet date. 4. In preparing the financial statements of R Limited for the year ended 31st March 2001, you come across the following information. State with reasons how you would deal with this in the financial statements. The company invested 100 lakhs in April 2001 before approval of financial statements by board of directors in the acquisition of another company doing similar business. The negotiations for which had started during the year. Okay. ओके इसकी कुछ कंडीशन नहीं थी ऑलरेडी. सो इन्होंने क्या दिया है देखो, AS4 डिफाइंस events occurring after the balance sheet date as those events, those significant events, favorable, both favorable and unfavorable, that occur between the balance sheet date and the date on which the financial statements are approved by the approving authority. In the case of a company. So accordingly, the acquisition of another company is an event occurring after the balance sheet date. However, no adjustment to assets and liabilities is required as the event does not affect the determination and condition of the amounts. And condition of the amounts stated in the financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2001. So the disclosure should be made in the report of the approving authority or those events occurring after the balance sheet date that represent material changes and commitments affecting the financial position of the enterprise. The investment of 100 lakh in April 2001 for the acquisition of another company should be disclosed in the report of approving authority to enable users of financial statements to make proper evaluations and decisions. Okay, so यहाँ पर क्या करना है? Yes, disclosure है, no adjustment to assets and liabilities is required. You just need to disclose in the report of financial, in the report of approving authority. Illustration 5 देखो, a limited company closed its accounting year on 30th June 2001 and the accounts for that period were considered and approved by the board of directors on 20th August 2001. So the company was engaged in laying pipeline for an oil company deep beneath the earth. While doing the boring work on 1st September 2001, it had made a rocky surface for which it was estimated that there would be an extra cost to the tune of 80 lakhs. You are required to state with reasons how the event would be dealt with in the financial statements for the year ended 30th June 2001. अभी जो पीरियड होता है फॉर इवेंट्स ऑकरिंग आफ्टर बैलेंस शीट डेट के लिए, वो पीरियड पता है आपको 30 जून से लेके 20 अगस्त तक का ही पीरियड होगा, क्योंकि 20 अगस्त को क्या हुआ है, करेक्ट, अप्रूव हुआ है फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स. और ये कब हुआ, ये हुआ है 1 सितंबर को. तो दिस इज नॉट एन इवेंट ऑकरिंग आफ्टर द बैलेंस शीट डेट. दिस इज द मेन कंक्लूजन. तो आपको पहले सब डिफाइन करना है कि AS4 on contingencies and events occurring after balance sheet date defines events occurring after balance sheet date as significant events, both favorable and unfavorable, that occur between the balance sheet date and the date on which the financial statements are approved by board of directors in case of a company. The given case is discussed in the light of above mentioned definition and requirements given in AS4. In this case, the incidence which was expected to push up cost became evident after the date of approval of the accounts. So this is not a event occurring after balance sheet date. Okay, मतलब यहाँ पर events occurring after balance sheet date की डेफिनेशन चाहिए बेसिकली उनको, तो वो वर्ड टू वन आपको लर्न करनी है. ओके, नेक्स्ट देखो, वाइल प्रिपेयरिंग इट्स फाइनल अकाउंट्स फॉर द ईयर एंडेड 31st March 2001, a company made a provision for bad debts at 5% of its total trade receivables. In the last week of February 2001, a trade receivable for 2 lakhs had suffered heavy loss due to an earthquake. The loss was not covered by any insurance policy. In April 2001, the trade receivables become bankrupt. Can the company provide for the full loss arising out of insolvency of the trade receivables in the final accounts for the year ended 31st March 2001? सो यस, यहाँ पर ट्रेड रिसीवेबल पहले से था, प्रोविजन की हुई है 5% एंड अभी 2 लाख की पूरी प्रोविजन करनी है क्या एज अ प्रोविजन फॉर डाउटफुल डेट्स. तो अप्रैल में एडिशनल इंफॉर्मेशन हमें पता चली है कि वो बैंकरप्ट हो चुका है, सो हम फुल प्रोविजन फॉर डाउटफुल डेट्स कर सकते हैं. Okay, so as per accounting standard 4, assets and liabilities should be adjusted for events occurring after the balance sheet date that provide additional evidence to the estimation of amounts relating to conditions existing at the balance sheet date. फिर facts लिखो. So full provision for bad debts amounting to 2 lakh should be made to cover the loss arising due to insolvency in the final accounts for the year ended 31st March 2001. It is because earthquake took place before the balance sheet date. Had the earthquake taken place after 31st March, then this would have been treated as non-adjusting event and only disclosures required as per AS4 would have been sufficient. Okay, but earthquake before 31st March हुआ था, February end में, करेक्ट. सो ये एडिशनल एविडेंस दे रहा है ऑफ कंडीशंस एग्जिस्टिंग एट द बैलेंस शीट डेट. सो यहां पर क्या करना पड़ेगा, यस एडजस्टमेंट करनी पड़ेगी एंड ये लिखना है तो लिख सकते हो, एग्जाम में नहीं लिखा तो भी चलेगा ये वाला पार्ट. इलस्ट्रेशन 7 लास्ट, वाई लिमिटेड हैज बुक डेट्स मतलब डेटर्स एंड हैज अ डाउटफुल डेट over recoverability of some of the book dates. Okay, Y Limited has book dates and has a doubt over the recoverability of some of the book dates. The amount that cannot be recovered is not quantifiable. Okay, जो उनको लग रहा है कि अमाउंट नहीं आ सकती वो क्वांटिफाइबल नहीं है. Thus Y Limited is of the opinion that provision for doubtful debt should not be created. So Y Limited creates provision for certain other expenses on estimated basis. So whether the contention of Y Limited is correct तो नहीं है. So क्या लिखा है, if it is likely that a contingency will result in a loss to the entity, then it should create a provision for that contingency on estimated basis. So based on the above, the contention that provision for doubtful debt is not to be created merely because the amount is not quantifiable is not correct. Hence Y Limited should make provision in the books on the basis of estimation. ये सारे इलस्ट्रेशंस नोटबुक में सॉल्व करो. इवेंट्स ऑकरिंग आफ्टर बैलेंस शीट डेट, एडजस्टिंग इवेंट, नॉन एडजस्टिंग इवेंट, उसके डेफिनेशंस लर्न करो. चलो पॉज करो, वीडियो सॉल्व करो एंड देन एक्सरसाइज के 2 क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करते. वही है रिपीटेड. So A Limited had sold its building for 50 lakh to B Limited and has also given the possession to B Limited. The book value of the building is 30 lakhs as on 31st March 2001. The documentation and legal formalities are pending. So the company has not recorded the sale and had shown the amount received as advance. Do you agree with this statement? So देखो possession दे दिया है, सेल हो चुका है 50 lakhs के लिए, करेक्ट. बुक वैल्यू 30 लाख है. सो सिर्फ डॉक्यूमेंटेशन एंड लीगल फॉर्मेलिटीज बाकी है. तो इन सब्सटेंस ये क्या है, सेल हमें ट्रीट करना चाहिए. सो दिस इज नॉट अ करेक्ट ट्रीटमेंट. The economic reality and substance of the transaction is that the rights and beneficial interest in the property has been transferred, although the legal title has not been transferred. So A Limited should record the sale and recognize the gain of 20 lakhs in its profit and loss account. The building should be de-recognized in the फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट. सो इसको सेल ट्रीट करना है. Next, during the year 2001-2, Raj Limited was sued by a competitor for 15 lakhs for infringement of trademark. Based on the advice of the company's legal counsel, Raj Limited provided for a sum of rupees 10 lakh in its financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2002. On 18th May 2002, the court decided in favor of party alleging infringement of the trademark and ordered Raj Limited to pay aggrieved party a sum of rupees 14 lakh. हमने ऑलरेडी 15 लाख का हमारे अगेंस्ट केस फाइल हुआ था, 10 लाख का प्रोविजन करके रखा था हमने, बट कोर्ट ने कितना डिसाइड कर दिया 18 मई को, यस 14 lakh. The financial statements were prepared by the company's management on 30th April 22 and approved by board of directors on 30th May 22. ओके, सो यहाँ पर बिफोर अप्रूवल ये आ गया है ना कोर्ट का डिसीजन. सो 4 लाख से और प्रोविजन हमें बढ़ानी पड़ेगी. सो एडजस्टमेंट टू एसेट्स एंड लायबिलिटीज आर रिक्वायर्ड for events occurring after the balance sheet date that provide additional information materially affecting the determination of the amounts relating to conditions existing at the balance sheet date. So in the given case, since Raj Limited was sued by a competitor for infringement of a trademark during the year 2001-2, for which the provision was also made by it, the decision of the court on 18th May for payment of the penalty will constitute an adjusting event because it is an event occurred before approval of financial statements. Therefore, Raj Limited should adjust the provision upward by 4 lakh to reflect the award decreed by the court to be paid by them to its competitor. So, had the judgment of the court be delivered on 1st June, it would be considered as an event occurring after the approval of the financial statements, which is not covered by AS4. In that case, no adjustment in the financial statements would have been required. So, एग्जाम में ये पार्ट नहीं लिखना है, यहाँ तक ही लिखना है आपको. ओके कि वो एडजस्टिंग इवेंट है, तो एडजस्टिंग इवेंट रिलेटेड डेफिनेशन, फिर फैक्ट्स ऑफ द केस लिखो, फिर कंक्लूजन लिखोगे. ओके सो मेनली इसमें क्या है, इवेंट्स ऑकरिंग आफ्टर द बैलेंस शीट डेट, एंड उसमें एडजस्टिंग नॉन एडजस्टिंग आइडेंटिफाई करके उस हिसाब से उसकी ट्रीटमेंट देनी है. ओके सो ये स्टैंडर्ड यहाँ पर ही खत्म होता है. चलो नेक्स्ट लेक्चर में नेक्स्ट स्टैंडर्ड के साथ